and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. It's so cold, I'm so cold, it's April and it's cold. Might have to put the heating on, I don't know if I should though. You shouldn't really, should you, in April? But it's cold. Today I'm going to be going over the books that I read in the month of March. I read 11 books in the month of March, 4 of which are audiobooks. I think I'll start with the audiobooks. I'll start with a very, very simple one, is the fact that I've been reading and listening to, working my way through the Harry Potter series. I don't know if you've heard of it, by J.K. Rowling. And I did Order of the Phoenix during March. It's the longest one. Enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Never used to like Order of the Phoenix when I was younger. Now it's one of my faves. And I also listened to, before I get into, I'll try and group the Women's Prize for Fiction books that I have read together. So before I get onto those, another audiobook I listened to was a book called Women on the Frontline by Stacey Dooley. It's a book I actually read last year in hardback form. I got it out from the library and I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to listen to it because it's narrated by herself. Stacey Dooley is an investigative journalist from the UK. She's about my age, I think. She's from Luton, which is just north of London, and she found her pathway to becoming an investigative journalist when she volunteered for a TV programme many years ago. I think it's called like Sweat, Blood and T-shirts or something. And yeah, it was looking inside the fashion industry and what goes on in the, God, I'm really frowning, aren't I? What goes on in the factories and stuff. She now she's done many documentaries, a lot of which are available on the BBC iPlayer or on YouTube. And I really enjoy it. And she won Strictly Come Dancing last year. She was on Strictly Come Dancing last year. And yeah, I really like it. This book, Women on the Frontline, it revisits the stories of some of the women that she's met throughout a documentary. So it doesn't focus on one particular documentary. It will take some women that she met in prison from the women's prison documentary she did, some women that she's met in Rio from the transgender documentary she did, and yeah, all over the place. And yeah, it's a really like informative, without it like and it's hard hitting stuff in there as well. Oh, Minnie, meow. And I really enjoyed it. I really loved it. I loved it when I read it last year, but I enjoyed it even more when I listened to it this year. So much so that I actually bought my mum the paperback for Mother's Day. So hopefully she will read that. She's about to go on holiday, so I want her to come back and say that she's read that. But yeah, very much enjoyed it and would recommend, particularly if you're a fan of Stacey Dooley. And then, as I said, I will get on to, let me reorder these guys, because now I'll get on to talking about the Women's Prize for Fiction books that I've read, because the long list came out earlier this month. I don't need to go over this. You've heard me talk about this a million times, and everyone else, but I listened to 2 audiobooks of these books. The first one is Milkman by Anna Burns, which won the Man Booker, so it's on the long list. It won the Man Booker. I suspect it will be shortlisted, and I listened to the audiobook, and it is a book from the perspective of a woman, and she is living in Northern Ireland at the time of the Troubles. There's a lot of politics going on between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and you hear about her life. Basically, you're hearing about her maybe boyfriend and this milkman that's sort of appearing in places that he shouldn't be appearing, and her relationship with her mother and her brother-in-law and things like that. And it's all told like that. It's really told like long windy sentences with, they'll be talking about the fact that her boyfriend's this car's come to the garage and it's an amazing car, and they're splitting up all the parts between the blokes that work in the garage. But then she'll go off on this big long tangent about how she went on a run with her brother-in-law and and yeah, the whole thing. I'm really glad I listened to it on audiobook, because I think if I'd have approached it in book form, I would have abandoned it. I completed it. That's why I'm talking about it in my wrap up. But yeah, I needed to listen to it because it kept me more engaged in it. However, my mind only had to like just drift a little bit, and you would not know what was going on. You would not know what was going on. And also, I hate to do this because these are very different books, but I was also reading at the same time Bottled Goods by Sophie Van Llewellyn, which is also on the long list for the Women's Prize, and I was getting very much confused because this is, so although there's lots of like I said, it's talking about the Troubles during the 90s in Northern Ireland, and you're hearing about sort of defectors and informers and things like that, which is basically what's going on in here, because this is talking about when Alina's brother-in-law defects to the west. This is set in Romania, and yeah, I was just getting a bit sort of because it was just so, like, I almost couldn't remember the things that would actually happen, because I was like, did I imagine that? Because it was just so, well, it wasn't for me. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, and I did find it difficult. And I don't know who I would recommend the writing style to. It just it was easier to follow. I've read another book like that by Emma McBride, and I did find it easier to follow than that, but yeah, it just wasn't for me. I gave it 2 stars, and yeah, it wasn't for me. The next Women's Prize book that I listened to was, I also gave 2 stars. And this is like a fond favourite of people's. I feel very, very nervous about this. And it was Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. I read Circe earlier on in the month, and decided I was going to listen to the audiobook of it. Didn't like Cersei either. And yeah, listen to the audiobook. Now, what I will say, like, it's a retelling, but I don't really use the word retelling, but it is a retelling of the Iliad, which is a subject. I studied classical civilization. Minnie, stop scratching Nanny's chair. I studied classical civilization when I was in 6th form, so when I was like 18, and I did the Iliad. And I remember quite enjoying it at the time. And actually, when I started listening to the Silence of the Girls, I was like, bloody hell, I'm really enjoying this. I wish I'd studied this instead of the Iliad, because the Iliad is like man heavy, and this is that story retold from the women's perspective, particularly somebody called I think it's Briseis, who it becomes Achilles' slave. And then in the second part, you're also hearing about some things from Achilles' point of view as well. It's tragic. There's literally not a glimmer of joy in the whole thing. It's really tragic. It's really violent. There's like trigger warnings for like violence, rape, death. There's bad language in there, and yeah, I just didn't love it. I think because of the way I felt after I read that, and the way I felt after I read Circe. Let's do Circe now. I also didn't really love this either. I gave both Silence of the Girls and Circe 2 stars each. And that's not to say, like, I know these books are beloved, and I know there's people that love them. I know people. Jean loves these books, and I think if you are into Greek mythology and things like that, and the classics, then absolutely you will love this. But I just don't think it's for me. And I've already talked about why I wasn't that fond of Silence of the Girls. But for Circe, this was just so much plot, like absolutely packed full, and I just couldn't feel like I could attach myself to any characters, because we were literally, they were whizzing off the page, never to be seen again moments later. And yeah, there was bits where I sort of was like thinking, oh yeah, maybe I'll enjoy this, and then that would be gone, and then that would be over. And yeah, I just didn't love it. And yeah, like I said, I know it's not for me, and I know there's going to be some upset people in the comments, because I know those 2 books are really beloved, but for me they were both 2 stars, and I didn't really love either of them. But I didn't hate them. That's why I count my when I give books marks out of 5, 1 star is I didn't like it, 2 is it was okay, 3 is it was good, 4 is it was very good, 5 was wah wah wee wah. And yeah, so yeah, I didn't like those 2. Also read Bottled Goods by Sophie Van Llewellyn. I don't know how I feel about this. I didn't read it that long ago, and I already feel like it's sort of merged into a Milkman shaped hole in my head. Yeah, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was sort of like the right amount of magical realism for me, which I'm probably gonna mention when I talk about another book that isn't a Women's Prize long list. But yeah, it was just fine. I think what I've learned from, and that's all I've got to say on it really. I think what I've learned from reading the Women's Prize, from reading long lists really, is that you read a lot of stuff that you're not mad on. And so far, like, I got this far reading the Women's Prize long list, and then I was like, well, I'd already read Normal People and Ghostwall, and these were still my favourite after having read 4 more books from the long list. However, things changed. So I then went on and read My Sister the Serial Killer by Yinkin Braithwaite. Really liked this. I gave it 3 stars. Well, I think I'll probably give it a 3.5 stars. I don't think this is going to win. I don't know if it will make the long list, but I enjoyed it. It's set in Nigeria. It's about a woman called Kuredi, and you're looking at her sister's life through her eyes, and her sister keeps getting herself in these situations where a man has supposedly attacked her, and he has ended up dead. And basically she is turning into, if she is not already one, a serial killer, and her name is Ayula, that's her sister. She's beautiful and everyone wants to be her friend, and men want to be with her and women want to be her, and Corradi is not that person, and she has to sort of differentiate between whether or not she wants to stick with her family or begin looking at things that like these deaths that Ayula's involved in another way, like should she maybe get the police involved. I enjoyed it. I was frustrated by Ayula because she's just so annoying. She's just so annoying, and she just gets everything, like, and just, it's just basically saying that, like, if you're good looking, you'll get whatever you want, basically. And yeah, and I really felt for Corradi. But yeah, I don't, as I said, I don't think it will be long listed, but I gave it 3.5 stars. It's only a short little thing, so yeah, I think it's a good sort of, do I want to use the word romp about a book that's about a serial killer, but enjoyed it nevertheless. The next one though, I gave 5 stars and I absolutely loved it, and I really would like this to win. I really hope it's on the shortlist because I absolutely adored it, and it's Ordinary People by Diana Evans. Now what I will say is, it's shiny because I got it from the library. What I will say is I read this book, and quite early on one of the characters mentions about how he loved a John Legend album early on in his relationship with his partner Melissa, I actually listened to, I read some and I was like, I'm going to listen to that album, and he goes through the songs and talks about which one means what to him and how he can relate it to his life. Listened to the album, thought it was wonderful. It was on the BookTube meetup, was talking about what I was reading. I said, I'm just reading Ordinary People at the moment, and then I went, we're just ordinary people, and I was like, oh my god, that's where the title comes from. So the title comes from a John Legend song, which within this book, Michael, not Michael, yeah, it is Michael loves it. So anyway, that's where the title comes from, and I didn't realise it till afterwards, even having listened to the John Legend album. But this is amazing. This is set in London just after Obama has come into administration, and you're following 2 couples, Melissa and Michael, and Damien and Stephanie, and they're both in failing relationships basically. Now they're giving it a really good go, and they want to stay together for family, for their children, for each other. You can see that there's still a lot of love there, but it is just not happening for them, and it's really tragic, and it's really sad, and it made me think about how much I love David and how much I never want to end up like these couples in this book. But although it's sad, and I wasn't expecting it to be quite as sad as it was for me, it's so beautifully written, and it's so gorgeously done, and the description of like places in here and how people are feeling about each other and how people are looking at each other, and the way that there is no love lost in this book, even though it is about failing relationships. I just thought it was amazing. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I really, like, I would feel like if I was to recommend this to someone, I would really put it with a disclaimer like, this is miserable. This is really miserable, but it's so beautiful as well. And yeah, there's also like quite a creepy bit going on there as well, because Melissa and Michael live in a house that they bought quite quickly. It all happened quite quickly, and after a few, I believe it's like after a few months of being in there, Melissa starts feeling that there's something, a night thing, she describes it as, in the house, which comes as a bit of a surprise because everything else is so real in this book. To then have a sort of like Melissa's thinking about this night thing in the house is a bit bizarre, but it really creeped me out. And actually I was on my own in one night. David was out watching a watching a gig with his friend, and I couldn't read it because I was creeped out that much that I couldn't read it. And she begins thinking all sorts of things, like this girl that used to live in the house before, that she is going to, like, potentially possessing her daughter. And yeah, so as well as having, and that's such a small bit, but it was done so perfectly that it really fucking creeped me out big time. But I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. Would have been my favourite book of the month if I hadn't have read this, which I adored. This is The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. Thought it was absolutely amazing. I read it as part of the Irish readathon. There was a wonderful readathon going on during the month where people were celebrating and reading Irish authors, and there was a few prompts and things like that. I didn't follow the prompts, but I definitely knew I wanted to read some Irish authors, which I actually did, because I read much more than that. I read Milkman as well, and I read another book by Jess Kidd. But this had been on my shelf for ages. I'd got it from Simon. Simon had 2 proof copies, and he gave gave one to me. I thought this was amazing. I absolutely loved it. You follow the life of Cyril Avery from before he is even born. You follow the life of his mother, discovering that she's pregnant with him in 1940s rural Ireland. She is pregnant outside of wedlock by somebody. She is not saying who the father is because she knows that they will believe him over her, and they'll say that she was the one that... Basically, she's not going to be looked upon favourably. She decides to move to Dublin, and she meets someone on the train on the way up there, and it all looks like it's going to work out okay. It doesn't work out okay, and there's quite a lot of doesn't work out okay moments in this book. But it's funny, it's sad. From one minute I'm like laughing. I cried so much in this. I don't really want to, because it's such a life. Now, I don't want to spoil anything for you, because each little decision and each little thing that happens leads to something else in that life. But it celebrates women, it celebrates friendship. It's just amazing and wonderful, and I just thought it was just amazing and wonderful. I really, really cannot stop gushing about this. I thought it was amazing. As soon as I finished it, the next day I went to the library and I got out whatever John Boyne books they had in the library, and I'm already started on A Ladder to the Sky. But I just think this is just going to have such a place in my heart. I really feel like this is one of my favourite books of all time. I loved it so, so much. And I finished it. I mean, it's a big old boy. It really is a chunker. I think it's like almost 600 pages long. As soon as I finished it, I felt like I could have started it again. I miss them. I miss the people in this book. I loved it. I really, really loved it. And then the last two are... the ones I'm going to show you now. So the first one is The Braid. I read this very early on in the month. This is by Letitia Colombani, and this is translated from Italian, I believe. As you know, I'm trying to read a translated book a month, so this was my translated book for the month. You are following 3 women in different places in the world. So Smita in India, Guilia in Sicily, and Sarah in Canada, and they all have something to do with this braid, hair. Hair is the big story piece in here. Smita works as she gets rid of she cleans out people's toilets in India. It's an awful job, and she just wants better for her daughter, and as a result she decides to sell her hair. Guilia works as an assistant in her father's wig making factory, and it is failing. And then Sarah is a lawyer, and sort of like this is like the Western story, and she is she's just found out she's unwell, and she's going to require a wig. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. It was very quick and easy read, and yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, it's been translated into like 28 languages and 350,000 copies sold worldwide. I've not even heard of it, but yes, very much enjoyed it for translated fiction. Very accessible translated fiction. Sometimes I feel like people approach translated fiction like, oh, am I gonna like it? But enjoyed it very much. And then the last book I read was Himself by Jess Kidd. It wasn't the last book I read. The last one I'm going to talk about was Himself by Jess Kidd, which was my Patreon book club pick. We were reading Irish authors, and it was picking between this and When All Is Said by Anne Griffin. We went for this. I'm so glad we went for this. I really liked it. I gave it 3 stars, and you follow a chap called Mahoney who returns to Moulderig, which is it says here, a speck of a place on Ireland's west coast, wanting to know what's happened to his mother. He's never met his mother. She gave him up when she was a baby, but he wants to know what's going on, and he becomes quite ingrained with the village that he's gone to, and the community around there, and they decide to put on a play to find out where people were on the day that his mother went missing. Now all of this is going on, but the added thing is that Mahoney can see dead people, so he can see people who have died, and they gravitate towards the people they loved, or to the place that they died, and or people they knew when they were alive, and things like that. And he hasn't seen his mother, which is why he's not sure if she is dead. And yeah, it was just very, very enjoyable. Really great characters. One of the characters in here, Mrs. Cooley, who Mahoney falls in with quite quickly. He really, she's really great. She reminded me of Norma Desmond from Sunset Boulevard. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm definitely going to read more Jess Kidd. I actually bought a Jess Kidd book at the weekend when I was at the BookTuber meetup. So yeah, so those are the books that I read in the month of March. Quite like, I've never had so many 2-star books in one month, but also 2 5-stars, and like 2 amazing 5-star books. This one's gonna be one of my favourites forever. So yeah, quite a mixed bag of a month, but enjoyable nevertheless. So let me know if you have read any of these books that I have read here. Oh, David's home. Hi David, I'm just filming my wrap up.
Hello.
In fact, I'm just about to say goodbye for my wrap up, so hold it there, mister, and I'll give you a big kiss. So these are the books that I read. Let me know what you read in the month of March, if you've read any of these guys. Sorry if I upset you by only giving Circe and Silence of the Girls 2 stars, but not everyone can like all the books all the time. And that's it from me, and I will see you again for another BookTube video. Goodbye!